That's almost large enough to settle too.
I believe I'm quite content as a spectator, thank you.
This is the very first scene after the prologue of House of the Dragon. The audience is introduced to both Rhaenyra Targaryen and Alicent Hightower. Two childhood friends who, well...
I want to fly with you on Dragonback, see the great wonders across the narrow sea and eat only cake.
care a lot for each other. Deeply.
My husband, my father, my lover, my son.
And the show isn't dancing around this. If anything, it's a driving force of the story. It's what gives the looming conflict a delicious layer of stakes. It's what makes characters second guess before making bold political moves. A reminder to humanize the opposing party. Outside of the show, the actors portraying both teen and adult Alicent and Rhaenyra have commented on the queer subtext, have said they were very conscious of it while filming and sometimes even leaned into it. Thousands of fans have devoured Olivia Cooke and Emma Darcy interviews, wondering when their on-screen chemistry will be put to good use in a romantic comedy or drama. And less appropriately, parasocial comments on speculations I found too boundary crossing to share. And all that for a ship that, by all means, is not canon, and probably never will be. But guess what? I think the show is better off for it. Because when the fuck did a relationship needed to become canon for it to matter? To properly analyze the relationship, it's important to know what transpires in the story. However, since the choices Rhaenyra and Alicent make are so integral to the larger plot, the quick summary I started writing ended up longer and longer until it no doubt would take up over half the video. And while I'm sure some people would be down for a half an hour summarization, that's not what I want this video to be about. Therefore, I will divide their relationship into separate blocks. The friendship, the spiteful, and the reconciliation. The friendship block is basically everything with young Alicent and Rhaenyra. It's the foundation on which their relationship is built. Obviously, the cracks that lead towards the spiteful are being built up in the friendship block. For example, Otto Hightower pimping off his own daughter to the King of Westeros, aka Rhaenyra's dad, whom she then marries. Or Alicent producing a male heir, making Rhaenyra's claim to the throne even shakier than it already was in this patriarchal society. And, of course, the final nail in the coffin, Rhaenyra's night of debauchery with not only her uncle, but her sworn protector Sir Criston Cole, whom she pursues after her uncle Daemon develops a single brain cell long enough to stop this idiocy mid-fuck. All of this is cross-examined by Alicent, near the tree they so lovingly once cuddled underneath.
Continue. In a brothel.
But it's not necessarily the act, but the lie that breaks that trust. It's that Rhaenyra swears her virtue
Upon the memory of my mother.
and Alicent believes her and has to find out through Sir Criston it was a lie. Alicent all as much declares war on Rhaenyra when she interrupts a speech at Rhaenyra's wedding banquet, donning not the black and red Targaryen colours, but the green colours of House Hightower. She asserts her dominant position as queen by calling Rhaenyra her stepdaughter for the very first time, making virtue and duty her banners. The spiteful block is thickest just after the first time jump. Alicent all but cries out to anyone who would listen that Rhaenyra's sons are bastards. Which they are. Trying to strengthen the claim for her son Aegon, the king's firstborn son. Every attempt at reconciliation is shot down, and smaller conflicts pile up until the first big pivotal conflict. Luke slashes Aemon's eye with a knife, and in her retribution, Alicent cuts Rhaenyra in her left arm. Just before Viserys' death, however, we're actually moving to the reconciliation block. On death's door, he asks of his family to make peace. And, in a surprising turn of events, they do. However fragile, it is genuine and heartfelt.
And for that she has my gratitude.
You will make a fine queen.
And in another timeline, this is where the show ended. They managed to keep their peace and Rhaenyra ascends to the throne, without a challenge from Aegon, who doesn't want the throne anyway, and she rules peacefully over the Seven Kingdoms, like her father before her. But fuck that, am I right? I mean, you've stuck through the uncle incest and pimping off your own daughter for political gain plotline, so you have at least a few screw loose in that old brain of yours. Don't shoot the messenger, you could have hopped off this train at any time, but you decided to stay on the messy bitches train like the rest of us. So grab some damn popcorn and let's ride this baby all the way to Drama Town. Because in his dying moments, Alicent mishears Viserys and thinks her husband's dying wish is for Aegon to become king instead of Rhaenyra. This misunderstanding will radically alter the course of history as Westeros will know it. Aegon gets installed as king before news even reaches Rhaenyra that her father has died, and the plot rapidly moves beyond either Rhaenyra's or Alicent's control. Where everybody else is eager to go to war, Rhaenyra shows restraint. Where everybody on the small council is willing to kill Rhaenyra's line for the sake of securing the throne, Alicent calls out this brutality for what it is.
The king did not wish for the murder of his daughter.
The interesting part about the 3-box structure is that the spiteful and the reconciliation block will keep flip-flopping from here on out. When Alicent sends terms of peace to Rhaenyra, she is clever enough to send along with it this memento MacGuffin, a reminder that
Queen Alicent has not forgotten the love you once had for each other.
But all bets are off when Aemon kills Rhaenyra's son, which was not intended. And in Daemon's revenge, he kills Aegon's infant son, which was not intended. And on the blame game goes. In the second season, Alicent and Rhaenyra only meet twice. Both times the other plead their case, ask for a different path, a peaceful path, to run away together even. But it's too late. It will always be too late. Because it's the reconciliation that never was. It can only be held onto for a fleeting moment. We are in a tragedy after all. Too much has happened for peace to ever last. I would love to dive in deeper into why the subtext of Rhaenyra and Alicent works so well with the inherent tragedy of this story. But I don't think I can do that just yet. At least not before addressing the elephant in the room, which is this particular exchange in the last episode of Season 2.
A son for a son.
And the internet applauded the scene for its nuanced portrayal of impossible sacrifices. Just kidding, the internet lost its absolute shit. What about Jaehaerys? The writers forgot about Jaehaerys. This choice is insane. This isn't Alicent. This is gay sapphic fanfiction. What about Jaehaerys? Book Alicent would never. This is fan service. Alicent's characterization got assassinated. The writers wrote fanfiction. This wasn't in the book. And, of course, what about Jaehaerys? And that's just from the comment section of an official HBO clip. I'm sparing you from whatever the hell I found on Reddit. As you can see, the complaints about this particular scene fall roughly into 3 categories. I'm putting a pin in the "meh, gay people" section for now and start off with the Alicent objection. The allegation stands as follows. Alicent Hightower would not sell out her son like this. And I'm not going to be smug about it, I legitimately want to know if this claim has merit to it. The claim can be proven or disproven by simply close reading Alicent's character arc in the second season. That way we can see if the choices she made in the season are a logical lead up to this moment. In the first episode of season 2, she speaks what she wants, which is victory. Her definition of victory is important.
Rhaenyra bending the knee, and Aegon sitting the Iron Throne in peace, as Viserys wished.
So not dead, just Rhaenyra bending the knee. Alicent is one of the most temperate voices and still of the belief this can be done without bloodshed. She pursues this by sending letters to Rhaenyra. Since there's no reply yet, it is argued that Rhaenyra probably refused the terms offered. Alicent calls upon Aegon to help negotiate new terms. But Aegon is completely distracted by his son Jaehaerys being adorable, and the topic never returns to negotiating through letters. That's another important thread that will keep building throughout the season. Alicent feels that her voice is being undermined. We also see her be intimate with Sir Criston. This is most odd, as in the first season, Rhaenyra's affair with Sir Criston was what triggered Alicent's silent declaration of war. Virtue and duty are her banners after all. This moment should instantly be a ping in your brain. Alicent is shown to be struggling with her declared identity she has held onto for 20 years. She tells Sir Criston this can never happen again, and yet at the moment the castle gets intruded by two men who kill little Jaehaerys, she is once again sleeping with Sir Criston. And while the following guilt is very clearly portrayed in Sir Criston, who projects his own offences onto another guard, Alicent is coping with her own guilt, once again clinging steadfast to her old banners. Yes, Helaena, we're going to do the procession because that's our duty. Did rumors of the affair get out? No? Does my image remain unsullied? Whew, good. Now that I have a moment to myself, let me drown myself real quick and contemplate what a mess I made of things. Like, girl indulges once and instantly feels the weight of it. She's not Rhaenyra, who can indulge however she likes and still believe in her own virtue. Something she either inherited from her father Viserys or learned through him. Because no matter how much evidence was thrown against him, he always chose Rhaenyra above anyone else.
Anyone whose tongue dares to question the birth of Princess Rhaenyra's sons should have it removed.
Contrary to Rhaenyra, the guilt clings to Alicent. And in episode 2, she's desperate to confess her sins and either be absolved or shamed for it. But nobody wants to hear it. Helaena is distraught and neurodivergent, Sir Criston is wrapped up in his own shame, and Father Otto does not wish to hear of his daughter's sex life.
I have sinned.
I do not wish to hear of it.
When she goes to her son, she finds him sobbing. For a moment, Alicent is in doubt whether she should console him or not. As a viewer, you're probably screaming, for the love of God, give that boy a hug. But she never had that bond with Aegon to begin with, and turns away. Even politically, consoling Aegon would be the right move here. That way he would cling to his mother more, be more reliant upon her, and potentially even heed her again in public. Yes, that is scheming and manipulative. Welcome to the universe of Game of Thrones. Alicent returns to her chambers where Sir Criston awaits her. After she slaps him a few times for escalating the war, the shagging is back on. What becomes clear from the first 2 episodes of this season is that Alicent is not in a good state of mind. Whatever little authority she once had has vanished with her husband's death. Whatever virtue and duty she has clung to is now on shaky grounds. But still she feels justified in her actions because she knows what Viserys' dying wish was: Aegon on the throne. Until this moment, where Rhaenyra enters the Sept and questions her, and she asks if her father told Alicent about the Song of Ice and Fire.
It's a story he once told. About Aegon the Conqueror. The Conqueror.
Whoosh! And there goes the last stable footing Alicent had left. Realizing that she might have misinterpreted Viserys' dying wish, which we know as a viewer she did because she did not have all the information, everything comes crumbling down. The first thing Alicent does is try to verify Rhaenyra's claim. She asks around at first and then resorts to reading history books in the hope she finds her answer there. Until Aegon removes the books. One by one, she realizes how much the men around her have run her life, and how little agency she has of her own. She swallows a fantasy morning after pill to avoid bearing Sir Criston's child. When Aegon is burned to a crisp in battle, she blames herself for putting him in that position in the first place. She gets overlooked to lead as a regent in favor of her son Aemond. Then Aemond strips her of her seat from the small council, saying she should return to more domestic pursuits. When she realizes what she has put Aegon through by forcing him on the throne, she now questions her position as a mother, something she has always struggled with, even telling Helaena that sadness is a condition of motherhood. And her belief that she has failed as a mother gets all but confirmed when her brother tells her of her son Daron, the only son not raised by her. He is stalwart and accomplished and handsome, but the description that nearly brings Alicent to tears is kind. When she says Aegon and Aemond lacked his kindness, she blames herself.
Was it the court? Was it their mother?
Like I said, guilt clings to Alicent like a cloak she cannot shed. The final straw that breaks her is when her and Helena's own bodily safety are in danger by the citizens of King's Landing. Even as little as wanting to light a candle to honor the dead now makes her have blood on her hands. Nothing she does is without cost, and everything she thought she stood for has gone to dust. For the first time in her life, she takes a step back and reflects upon her own wants and needs. Were my banners of duty and virtue truly my own? Or were they instilled by my father, confirmed by my husband, and then rallied in defiance against Rhaenyra? In the last episode, she asks Helena if she wants to leave all of this behind, and then has to physically stop Aemond from pushing Helena onto the battlefield. The next scene, she asks the Maester for his discretion and goes to Rhaenyra, the only person who could still prevent a war. We're finally back to this moment, and lay the accusation once again before us. Would Alicent Hightower sell out her son? Yeah, she would. This moment is a logical conclusion to the character arc she has had this entire season. Or are we seriously forgetting the conversation between Alicent and Aegon where she dismisses him entirely as king?
Do you think simply wearing the crown imbues you with wisdom?
She's basically saying, just shut up, boy, and be pretty. That's what I had to do, I endured, and now it's your turn. This is a tired woman who has basically given up. You can tell it pains her still, even pleads for Aegon's life before Rhaenyra shuts her down. That doesn't mean she doesn't care for her son. Gauging from the reaction online, however, it seems that Alicent gave 2 thumbs up, handed Rhaenyra a blade and said, "Go get him, girl!" Like, no, she hates this. But it's the same argument she has heard in the small council against Rhaenyra. And she couldn't prevent them from escalating the war. Why would Alicent think she'd have any power to stop the events that are yet to come? Heck, let's be real for a second. If Alicent hadn't heard Viserys that night, Aegon's ascension would have happened regardless. At the council, she's shaking like a leaf for the betrayal that now must occur against Rhaenyra. And the council around her is all like, so yeah, as per our last business meeting. Like, these motherfuckers were scheming to get Aegon on the throne for ages and would kill off Rhaenyra's entire family within the blink of an eye. Alicent misinterpreting her husband's final wish was just a convenient excuse they could use. But it wasn't of any real consequence. So why the outrage? Does Alicent not do exactly to her son what her father did to her? And is the damage Alicent does to Aegon not a ripple effect that was first planted by Otto?
If you had not been so relentless in advancing Aegon as heir!
Dutiful Alicent obliges, until this very moment. Even her clothes reflected, turning back to the soft blue she wore as a child, before the games got to her and she was just the Lady Alicent. And consider that perhaps Alicent sees death differently. In episode 2, there's this revealing motivation when she says,
The child is dead. His pain is ended.
His pain has ended. Let that sink in for a little bit. Alicent is of the mind that to live is to endure pain and suffering. That is pretty much what life has been for her up until this moment. She's dutiful and virtuous and just. All of those have one thing in common: endurance. And Alicent hasn't exactly had an easy life. She has suffered a lot at the hand of that endurance. So what is death then but the end of someone's suffering? Perhaps in her mind she is sparing Aegon an even worse fate. In her conversation with Rhaenyra, she even says,
My life itself is forfeit.
She does not have any dreams or wishes. Not even something like, gosh, I never got to try out stuff when I was young. I wonder where my true passions lie, and I'd like to seek them out. No, none of that. Alicent's great ambition is to walk around and breathe the open air.
To die unremarked and unnoticed. And be free.
This is the face of a woman who secretly longs for death. Like, not actively seeking it out, but boy oh boy, it sure would be nice to end all the suffering. And it makes sense. It makes sense that Alicent has so little ambition, because has she ever been able to be anything else but what was expected of her?
What have I done but what was expected of me?
At this point in the story, Alicent is searching for that freedom, most beautifully painted in the very last shot of the season. The dawn of a new day. What will await her? Will she walk around the wilderness for the next 2 seasons? No, probably not. Alicent is too much of a key player to just nope out of the show like that. I'm convinced she will come back and participate in this Game of Thrones once more. That doesn't make the storyline unnecessary or pointless. On the contrary, I think it's going to be vital. Right now, Alicent may think she has returned to her former self, but she hasn't a clue who that person is. That's why she needs to retreat for a bit and really sit on her actions, motivations, and what's in it for her. Alicent needs to become part of the games for her own reasons, not the reasons instilled in her by her father. And once she figures out her internal drive, what really makes her want to participate on her own terms, she will become a much more important player because of it. To her own detriment, of course. As is the nature of a tragedy. Alicent and Otto both use their own child as a pawn for their own selfish wishes. Her father wanted to gain power. Alicent wants to be free of it. Hell, she shows way more remorse for what she has agreed to than Otto ever fucking did. So why do people... In the book! Ah yes, the book. Jesus Christ, I've not even read Fire and Blood and I'm already sick of it. Don't get me wrong, it actually sounds like a very interesting concept for a fictional book. But the way people use it as a means to tear down the show is exhausting. I can't believe I have to say this, but House of the Dragon is not Fire and Blood. An adaptation needs to adapt. Not just because it is a different medium and every medium has different methods to portray a narrative, but because an adaptation is a way for creators to reflect upon the source material and potentially improve it. Like the friendship between Rhaenyra and Alicent, a change that was universally applauded in season 1. This is great, people said. It will raise the stakes in the oncoming conflict. This change meant Alicent needed to be younger, which in turn had the logical follow-up that Alicent would not be the best mother, being a child still herself. The absence of their mother's love in return affected Aegon, Aemond and Helaena, and so the ripple waits through the wave of the story. But apparently those additional stakes were one stake too many for the online populace. I think it's a good thing. If you make changes to a story, then you have to follow them through. Game of Thrones has shown that if you make changes and don't follow them through, you end up giving them book endings that make no bloody sense in your version of the story. House of the Dragon has made certain decisions, and reversing them now just to please some salty fanboys is just going to make the plot confusing. And I personally hate to watch season 3 and 4 and go like,
boo! Pick a plot line!
I can't believe I'm only on the second point of people's complaints. Trust me, I'm getting to the gay subtext. We just have a bit more ground to cover. Funnily enough, the next objection is a perfect vessel for me to discuss Rhaenyra's season 2 arc. Because what about Jaehaerys? How dare Rhaenyra claim a son for a son while she already took a son, Aegon's son Jaehaerys, in retribution to the death of her own son Luke? Well, consider this. Rhaenyra has convinced herself Jaehaerys' death is not on her hands. I briefly mentioned that Rhaenyra has a certain delusion, similar to Viserys, that she either inherited from him or learned through his behavior. And I have to give full credit to Miss Wer on Tumblr and Dark Sister on Twitter for that brilliant analysis I'll be building upon, linked to the originals in the description. Rhaenyra believes in her own righteousness, and like a good Shakespearean tragedy, that will most likely become her downfall in the seasons yet to come. She swears upon the memory of her mother that Daemon never touched her, except he did. When Jace, her own son, asks her if he's a bastard, without blinking an eye, Rhaenyra says,
You are a Targaryen.
and her delusional belief in this is similar to Viserys's, who threatened to have people's tongue cut out for telling the truth. When Jace rightfully raises concerns that giving a bunch of bastards some dragons would weaken his own claim to the throne, Rhaenyra is absolutely baffled.
You are my heir.
What are you talking about? You are my heir. Why would you think anybody would do to you what has been done to me? I'm the rightful heir to the throne after all. People will soon see how I see it. Over the course of the season, Rhaenyra slowly transforms into a more delusional and crueler leader. As Miss Wur points out, at the start of the season, she wholly rejects Daemon's ideology of a son for a son. It's the cause of their biggest fight yet. And it ends with Daemon flying off to eat some goddamn humble pie, as is tradition in the Game of Thrones universe. At the end of the season, however, she evokes the very same sentiment she has rejected in the past. Come on, guys! The writers didn't forget about Jaehaerys. Rhaenyra just does not consider the trespass her own.
The trespass was not mine.
A son for a son is supposed to be cruel. It was at the beginning of the season, and it still is at the end of the season. The only person who shifted is Rhaenyra. Or was perhaps the ritualistic massacre of a bunch of common folk too subtle for you too? Which brings me to the second part of Rhaenyra's character arc in season 2. And I'll preface that this is based on building blocks being set up in the season. It might turn out differently in the seasons yet to come. But Dark Sister argues that instead of the show making Rhaenyra paranoid and neurotic in the final arc, they're going to make her more of a cult leader figure. And I could instantly see it. Progressively, she evokes the gods.
But I cannot gainsay that which the gods have laid before me.
Emma pitched the idea that Rhaenyra would walk among the dragon seeds like a preacher preaching to their flock. When asked in a GQ interview what they think Rhaenyra feels like when watching the Targaryen bastards burn, they reply, I think she feels like a god. I think she feels super proud. Rhaenyra believes it is her divine right to sit on the Iron Throne, and throughout the season we see her slowly lean into that faith. Adam claiming sea smoke is like a miracle to her, and it bolsters her to do what she does in episode 7. I also see this reflected in her relationship with Mysaria. While they start out wary, they slowly learn to trust each other and even lean on another. In episode 6, Mysaria basically declares herself a true believer. And that's exactly what Rhaenyra craves. With Daemon gone, not entirely sure what he's doing or if he ever will come back, and her council constantly questioning her actions, she needs someone who believes that she is the right person to sit the throne as much as she does. But the kids didn't lead to anything. First of all, by God are you people boring. But more importantly, the literal next scene is why the kiss is important. Her kiss with Mysaria is, well, I wouldn't go as far as say it's a religious experience for her, but it does embolden her to ignore her counsel and fly directly into a confrontation. Without that kiss, her council would have been summoned, they would have argued she's too important of an asset to investigate who claimed the dragon, Adam would have never been able to immediately bend the knee to Rhaenyra, and she would not have seen for herself that it is possible for commoners to claim a dragon. Genuinely, are you people watching the same show as I am? No doubt someone is typing right now that the writers are obviously Team Black because they make you root for Rhaenyra or whatever. Which, no they're not, I just argued the writers are slowly building up her descent. She's already crossing a line she would not have in the beginning of the season. But secondly, and far funnier, is that in a roundabout way, you're saying Emma Darcy is so charismatic and convincing in their portrayal of Rhaenyra that you're sucked into her ideology of righteousness. Which then bothers you. And I don't think that's quite the insult you aimed for, my dude. Well done, Emma. We love to see non-binary royalty thrive. At last, we have arrived. The gay stuff. At first I thought this would be a fun and quick 20-minute video. But then I decided to browse the fandom spaces to see if there was some interesting analysis I hadn't thought of. Had the worst fandom experience in a decade and bitterly added 3.5k of character analysis on this fun and quick 20-minute video. So people didn't instantly crucify me for liking the worst season final since Game of Thrones Season 8. I agree that it sucks the season was cut short due to circumstances. I do think it suffered from some pacing issues and it very much felt like an episode 8 in a 10-episode season, making the ending rather anticlimactic. But comparing this to Season 8? Girl, respectfully and objectively, no. I started out this video by asking the question, since when did a ship needed to become canon for it to matter? And I think Alicent and Rhaenyra's relationship is the perfect case study for this. Because this subtext is not subtle. From the actors to the writers to the directors to the cinematography itself, the heart of the show lies in the relationship between these two women. Denying that will lead to misinterpretation of the text. I suppose that's why all these angry fanboys are having such a bad time. Meanwhile, I'm having a great time. Frankly, if I had a nickel for every time I got manically invested in a hugely successful show with a tragic homoerotic subtext between the two female leads, based on a book series that had its first book published in 1996, I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that I have a type. But unlike Wicked, where I think the musical will be an all-around better and more satisfying story if the two main girls coupled up, check out my video if you want to hear more, I am perfectly content with the canon of where Alicent and Rhaenyra are at. The reason for that, I think, lays in the fact that the story is going to end in tragedy. You don't even need to have read the book to know that. It's stated in the prologue of the show.
The only thing that could tear down the House of the Dragon was itself.
Similar to the peace that never was, it is the romance that never was. Or at the very least, never could be. They could have been happy and together, if not for Otto's interference. Alicent would have been the perfect confidant once Rhaenyra would sit the throne, if not for her father beating her to it. The first episode alone is outrageously queer. From the offering to ride on the dragon together, to long embraces, to
I like this position, it's quite comfortable.
to the daydreams of running off together, to hand-holding, to whatever the hell this is. It's literally the only episode we get before things get complicated, before Rhaenyra is named heir and Alicent becomes Viserys' betrothed. And the subtext got an added boost this season by Rhaenyra officially becoming a girl kisser. Seriously? That's the terminology we're using these days? Jesus Christ, I'm getting too old for this shit. Okay, Rhaenyra is a girl kisser. What's so significant about that? Context, baby. Context is everything. Rhaenyra being explicitly queer puts those early days with Alicent into a different light. They were each other's first love, and it doesn't even matter if you consider it to be platonic or romantic or something else, it was clearly there. And because that first love was so ruthlessly ripped away, they cannot let go of it. It's a symbol of a time where things weren't so complicated. Of course they are holding out for that. Who wouldn't? Another great thing about the show is that Alicent and Rhaenyra keeps getting mirrored to each other. Actually, the show does that with all its characters. If you start looking for it, you just constantly see characters mirroring each other. Here's Viserys calling Rhaenyra the Realm's Delight, and here's Aegon wanting to be called the Realm's Delight. Here's both Helaena and Rhaenyra grieving their dead son. Here's Aemon burning down a village full of innocent people to prove to himself he has power. Here's Rhaenyra burning down a bunch of innocent people to prove to herself she has power. Frankly, we could be here for another hour if you wish to go through every parallel made in this show. Given Alicent and Rhaenyra's relationship is the heart of the story, they are each other's constant mirror. Narratively, emotionally, and even physically. Alicent slashes Rhaenyra's arm in retaliation for taking her son's eye. Rhaenyra sends a bunch of food to the citizens of King's Landing, inadvertently setting off a mob that got into Alicent's arm. Rhaenyra swears on the memory of my mother. Nothing happened between her and Daemon. And then some sick bastard in the writer's room, affectionately, had Alicent say the exact same thing when telling Viserys changed his mind about his choice of heir.
I swear this to you, on the memory of my mother.
They are also haunted by wrong timing. In season 2, they only meet twice, and both times they visit the other in secret to seek for a peaceful solution. However, in both instances, this is at a time the visited party has the upper hand. Suddenly, they evoke some righteous reason that it's too late to stop this train from where it's going. And with Alicent's final plea,
Come with me.
they both have stated they wanted to run off together, leaving all this mess and these complications behind. But it's equally unrealistic as it is enticing, a mutual daydream that never came to fruition. Simultaneously, they are each other's equal within the narrative. This happens in both a supportive and aggressive manner. They are supportive to each other in childhood, but literally have each other at cutthroat in adulthood. Which is a great example of how they are able to cut through each other's bullshit like nobody else can. They see each other for exactly who they are, not what they portray themselves to be. And what's more intoxicating and terrifying than being seen like that? It's no wonder they keep seeking each other out. Also, and this is quite the open door, but whatever, Alicent becomes the queen before Rhaenyra ever does. It's the queen and the princess. Rhaenyra used to outrank Alicent, and now Alicent outranks her. Of course, and this is the caveat, the people of Westeros are fine with Alicent as queen, because their king is sitting on the actual throne, at least in theory and spirit. Alicent is only the queen consort, but a queen regnant can never have a king by her side, because a king always outranks a queen because of patriarchy. Hooray! That's why in the Netherlands we now have a king and queen, but King Willem-Alexander's father, Prince Claus, was only ever a prince, because the actual monarch was Queen Beatrix. Queen Bea is fine, by the way. In the Netherlands we have this thing where people get to retire, including the monarch. I know! Shocking! If only King Viserys would have followed the Dutch model of royal succession, we wouldn't even be in this mess right now. But yeah, the husband of a reigning queen can only ever be a prince consort, because under this patriarchal ranking system, only a man can ever be on top. I mean, that's essentially Daemon's arc right there. He needs to come to terms with not becoming the king. If Matt Smith had a nickel for every time he played a prince consort with too much pride, he'd have 2 nickels. Which isn't a lot, but it's weird that he has a type.
What would you call the husband of the queen?
Well, the king.
There it is then.
Consort.
It is a command.
Would that you were the king.
Another thing I think is both a mirror but has a polar opposite outcome is their involvement with religion. Alicent's religion has been a pillar for most of her life. She prays to the gods and visits the Great Sept regularly to remember the dead. She's tormented by this religious guilt many times. That's where her language of sinning comes from. She feels shame for supposedly indulging. Oh no, I consensually shagged the man who vowed celibacy and now a child is dead. Classic Catholic guilt. Meanwhile, Rhaenyra was never much for religion, or feeling guilt in general. But as discussed before, we see her slowly slip deeper into a form of religion. But she does not really believe in the Seven, I'd wager. Her gods are the dragons. Her prophecy is the prince who was promised. And she is that prince. She is the Messiah. She is the chosen one to sit on the throne. Rhaenyra, in so many words, wants to become a god, because she believes she will be a just one. Where religion makes Alicent suffer from shame, Rhaenyra gains pride. This does not make Rhaenyra any better off, mind you. As a wise man once said,
"Pride is not the opposite of shame, but its source. True humility is the only antidote to shame."
Speaking of polar opposites, Alicent's duty versus Rhaenyra's freedom is another one largely measured out, especially in season 1. But what I love about season 2 is that their individual arcs are built up in such a way that by the end of the season, they've switched places. This time it's Alicent who yearns and reaches for that freedom, and Rhaenyra is bound by duty. it is most beautifully portrayed in their final scene together. The first time Rhaenyra tells Alicent to go in that conversation, it's very dismissive.
I'll go then. Leave us behind, as you say.
And look at this shot. Alicent is literally on the doorstep of her newly chosen path, a beacon of light within reach, held back by the walls of history surrounding them. And Alicent could have left right then and there. She could have said, well, screw you too then, and left it all behind. But she doesn't. She resorts back to her old, anxious habit and then turns around back into the fold of history once again. Alicent draws up one final plan to what she thinks will lead to the least amount of bloodshed. One more game before she's done. And when the final play is laid out, Rhaenyra tells her to go, with tears in her eyes this time. All this leads to the final 2 shots of the season. Rhaenyra trapped, stuck and crushed underneath the weight of history. Alicent with nothing but the sky around her. Free. Once more they have found each other, started to speak that familiar language they thought they had lost over the years. But it's too late. It will always be too late, because they are doomed by the narrative. It's fantastic. I'm eating this shit up. So you don't want Rhaenyra to be with Alicent? Correct. Well, want is a strong word, but I don't need them to be together. I don't need them to kiss or even say they were once in a romantic relationship. And I don't need them to run off together into the woods. I need them to ruin each other's lives and yet be each other's light in their darkest days. Be haunted by each other in both dream and nightmare. What's so difficult to understand about that? A happy ending for these two would not make any sense for the story that is being told. Yet they can't keep but always think of one another, to look out for the other. That's what makes their story so compelling. And let me be crystal clear that this does not fall under queerbaiting. Queerbaiting is a market strategy that does not apply in this situation. It's not queerbaiting when actors, writers, directors or other people working on the show genuinely talk about their own interpretations of the text. It's not queerbaiting to have queerness as a subtext. And it's even not queerbaiting if the showrunners prefer to keep something subtext, even if everyone on the team is on board for the romance. Sometimes that's just not where the story takes you. More and more, it seems people think subtext is a bad thing, or at the very least inferior to text. But it's not. Far from it. It's a hidden layer underneath the text that is still understood by the audience. It's a storytelling device, and an incredibly important one at that. Without it, literature and any other form of storytelling would become as flat and literal as a study book text. Which brings me to a question I have. When does a ship become canon? In fandom spaces, there seems to be this unspoken consensus that kissing equals canon. And I'm not even surprised by this development, because have we not been raised on cinema history where kissing was used as a narrative device? It's a shortcut way to showcase flourishing romantic feelings, or to indicate a happily ever after. But with gay ships especially, there's an additional layer. It becomes proof. A kiss is irrefutable evidence that cannot be dismissed by the naysayers, no matter how hard they try to tank the IMDb scores. Subtext can be waved off or declared inadmissible, but you can't ignore a kiss. Perhaps that's why queer people put so much additional value on it. Sure, people will certainly complain about it still, but they can no longer play the "you're just delusional" card they love to play. And I do want to give people the benefit of the doubt and not immediately dismiss everyone as homophobic. Some are for sure, but sometimes people don't know where to look for and miss clues along the way. That's fine. It's probably not your experience and not in your frame of reference. But before you complain about it on the internet, maybe go back to the show itself, and with this new framework, check if you missed or misinterpreted a scene or two. Chances are you have. So no, this isn't gay fanfiction, you dingus. It's the heart of the show. Just because they aren't making out sloppy style does not make their relationship any less significant. We're not all collectively hallucinating these scenes. That love is even stated by other characters in the show.
Long ago, she drew Alicent into her web.
She holds love for our enemy.
Ironically, I genuinely think a romance framework would help some people understand what the narrative is going for. Friendship is mostly understood as a lesser form of love than romance, so they can't understand why this narrative is so compelling. By purposefully looking at Alicent and Rhaenyra's relationship through a lens of romance, some things might finally start to click for you. I don't know, give it a try. You might end up surprising yourself. Either that or you keep on fundamentally and willfully misunderstanding what the show is about. To each their own misery, I guess. So why does subtext matter? Because it enriches the story that is being told. It gives layers that you can dig into and analyze. You can even make a whole video about it. Subtext is something you can chew on, because it's not being chewed for you. And don't get me wrong, I understand why canonical gay relationships are important. But in our search for more and better representation, let's not forget what makes a story between the lines so compelling. That's where our history lies after all. So let's not lose our appreciation for it. Rhaenyra and Alicent's story shows us that a relationship can be completely subtextual and still be the axis of the entire story. And if that's not fucking powerful, I don't know what the hell is. I'm too slow. Alright. We're finally back to this moment.